Okay, this is a very exciting time. Before we get into the final project, we are going to take a look at something called SASS, which is going to make our CSS life so much easier. So let's get going. You're going to love this. And what we're going to do is actually go to the file extension tool here. Let's expand this all the way. And we're going to add something called, let's just search SASS and see what we get. Okay, so this is what we get if we search SASS, and you're gonna see one called Live SASS Compiler, and this is what we want. So let's click on this and hit install. And we are done, that's all we need. So now we can close this up here. Let me scroll down a bit. So as you can see, it says, okay, SASS compiler, whatever, let's close this, but we have a button here. So rather than just writing style.css, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna delete this and I'm gonna create a folder called styles, okay? And rather than using style.css, what we're gonna be using is something called styles.scss, okay? So let's create one. I'm gonna say style.scss like this and hit enter, okay? So in here, we can do the same thing. Right, so make sure that you just add an S before the CSS. That's the only difference that we're gonna need. So now take a look. I can just do the same thing that we had, a margin 0, padding 0, and let's do box sizing, border box. So everything that you would usually do. Box sizing, border box, like this. Hit save, and now when we click on watch SASS, oh, you're gonna see that it actually generates us a CSS file. We can close this up here. So basically what SASS is you can write CSS in a different way, and at the end of the day, it's gonna output you a style.css file with some modifications. So as you can see here, this is the one we're gonna link, the actual style.css. It even actually adds this watch SASS compiler, it even adds some prefixes to our code. So again, these prefixes, WebKit and things of that sort that you might see, or if we just grab the body and add a display flex, this is gonna save and it's automatically gonna recompile your CSS code. So as you can see, MS Flexbox, this just adds more compatibility for all the browsers to support. So you don't have to manually do this, but when you use this compiler, it's gonna automatically do it for you, which is super nice. So again, we work in SCSS here, but this is what we're gonna link to our project. So we're still linking a style.css. So if we go back here, style and style.css, this is what we link. However, since we're working with SASS now, we have the ability to do a lot of awesome things. So I'm just gonna go in here at the body, I'm just gonna create a random section. Okay, just a section here. I'm gonna add a H2 that's gonna say main title, and let's also add a paragraph maybe with lorem 10 and a button. Okay, and you know what, let's say submit, and what I'm gonna do is stack another one in here. So I'm gonna add another div or something. Let's add a box that's also gonna have some paragraph, lorem 5, okay? So just added some content that we can mess around with. So the first thing that we can do is use variables. Now we saw that we could do that in style.css, but there's a different way that we can do it in SASS. And again, the beautiful thing is that at the end, this is going to compile into normal CSS code, and it's not going to be using variables, which you might know that variable support in CSS is not as great. So we get benefits here. Writing the variables is simpler in SASS, and also we get the most amount of browser or support there is. So here's how you do it. You add a dollar symbol. Oh yeah, and then you give a name of your property. So maybe we have a primary color. So we can do primary color. Okay, I'm gonna add a dash here. We can just do primary, but we just add a colon, and then we just use the color that we want. So I can do 3, 4, 5, I don't know, something like that. There we go, we got a green. Let's change this. So maybe this is our primary color, a dark blue. Okay, hit save. Perfect. So if I want to use this variable, take a look. It's super simple. You just say color, and then you do $, primary. Okay, hit save, control save. And as we can see when it compiles, if we go back here, it just adds the color normally. Okay, so we don't have any variables or anything like that. We only use it in style.scss here. So if we take a look, if we open up the go live here, the live server. So it might be hard to see a bit on this, but the color has been added. So now the nice thing is, again, I can kind of remove this and I can do, let's see, let me remove this as well. Let's see what we have here. We have a section, H2, and section. Maybe I want to add it to the H2 and the button. So we can do section H2, and we can say this should be, color should be primary. And then we can do section. Let's do button, color primary. Hit save. Take a look, and this changed the color and this changed the color. Okay, so super nice. It works perfectly. And again, if I modify this, then it kind of affects everything that you have the variable on. But again, I want to emphasize this because this is so cool, because the file that it generates just literally adds color and color. Okay, it doesn't add any variables. Okay, and move on. We got it. We understand. We're not stupid. Okay, well, I'm just excited about this. Okay, and that's why I want to show you. And obviously you can use these variables to create anything. So if you want, like, hey, I want some primary, or I want a big font size or something, we can do it like this as well. And everything is still fine. So we can do font size, the big font. There we go, hit save. There we go, so everything works properly. Okay, now here's a big thing that I think is just wonderful and which drives me insane in CSS. How many times did you do this? You do section. Actually, let's give this a class. Okay, so we have maybe a class of, let's do maybe the introduction, okay? So how many times did you do this? Introduction, and then you add some styles to it. Min height 100 VH, and then you do display flex, and then you do maybe a justify content. Let's do a space around, that's fine, and align item center. Okay, so we've seen this, right? But what do we do if we want to style the H2? Maybe, oh, let's change the direction of this actually, because that looks terrible. Flex direction, let's do column. Okay, okay, so we have this. And then we want to style the title. So what do? We do introduction H2. And then we add a font size of, let's do the primary. Okay, since we're using, excuse me, let's do font size of big font, like that. All right, so we do that. And then if I want to get the button, I do introduction button. And then we do border, none. And then we do background. Okay, so we kind of always need to go underneath and do introduction H2, introduction button. And this gets just so long and kind of messy, right? So the beautiful thing about SASS is you can remove all of this and you can add it straight in here. So if I have introduction and I want to grab the H2 in the introduction, I can just go in these curly braces right here. I'm going to leave some extra space. And I'm going to do H2 and open it up in here. So I can copy this over, and this is pretty much the same thing. Introduction, everything in here, and this I can actually remove and hit save. Oops, I forgot to remove the dot. There we go. Hit save. Let's close this up and take a look. Everything still stays the same. How cool. So you don't need to separate anything anymore. We can add everything inside here. So all my introduction H2s, the buttons and everything, I can just stack in here. Again, to deal with the button, I can just copy the properties, get rid of everything, add a space here and say button. And paste that in. Boom, we have successfully stacked everything in here. Okay, let's change the padding of this button a bit. Let's do 2 rem, 5 rem. That's large. Oh no. 3 and 1. Okay, good enough. Let's add a cursor pointer to this. Save. Okay, now how can we add, maybe I want to add a hover or something to it. Well, it's super easy. We can go inside the button and do it in here. So what we can do is add an add symbol around, what's that? And, yeah, it's an and symbol. And then we can do a dot hover like this. And then we can open our thing again. And here we can do background. Let's change this to light blue or something else. Something like that. Hit save. And as you can see, when I hover over it, it applies that hover. So again, it's very nice because we can keep stacking things together. So we can, in the introduction, we can stack these, and in the button, we can also add the hovers and all of those other good stuff, the focus and things of that sort. So we can even add a transition here if we want a 1 second ease. Let's do all. Save. Yep, so there we go. Okay, so this is basically called nesting. We can nest all of our elements, and the nice thing is I can even further nest if I want. So if I want to get this box and then style the p tag. Now for this one, you probably might not want to keep nesting over and over again, especially if this is something unique. You can just go down here and get the box and go from there, but you can also nest. So in here inside, since the box is in the introduction, I can just go here and say box, and I can add a color of light coral. Okay, so there we go. I'm affecting all the paragraphs inside that box. Okay, but I'm doing everything straight in here. Okay, so this is called nesting, and it's super awesome, and it's gonna make your life super easy. And again, I want to make sure to show you that when we actually go back to style.css, it actually separates everything for us. As you can see, we still have introduction, introduction H2, introduction button, so everything is separate here. And that's fine, because again, we're not working, we are never working with this file. That's the nice thing. We can work here in our own nice, cool way, and at the end of the day, it's gonna output that traditional style.css that the browsers are gonna understand. Okay? So next up, here's the big one. Have you seen how messy our style.css usually gets with like 200 lines of code? Wouldn't it be nice to kind of separate everything and make it easy? Well, now you can. So let me show you. So maybe I want to separate this whole introduction section into its own. And maybe we want to have a footer or a navigation. And I want to make sure that everything is separate in their own files. So we can do that. In the style.css, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to click here, new, and I'm going to name this. I'm going to give it an underscore like this. All right, so an underscore, and then give it any name I want. So for this one, I'm going to name this intro.scss. All right, so this is the introduction styles. So everything that's introduction, I'm going to copy over like this and paste it in here. Maybe I also want to separate the global style. So you know that we're dealing with the HTML and we add the font size, and then we maybe, I don't know, just add some variables and things of that sort. So some basic things. So things like this, let's do HTML. All right, you have some styles here, font size. I'm not going to change it now, but you get the point. Those basic setup files that we do at the beginning of every CSS. So we can also copy this over, and I'm going to create a new file here called I'm gonna do underscore again. This is very important. This is how you create these partials. And then we're gonna name this maybe some global styles, global.scss. Okay, paste this in here. And now to import it, we're gonna import everything in this style.css. Okay, so in here, what I'm gonna do is say add import. And then I'm just gonna add a quote and navigate to styles and global SCSS like that. Now I actually moved this outside, so let me drag it in the intro. And we can also import this, import styles, and we're gonna say intro, hit save. And let's see, we get an error here. What we actually need to do is get rid of the styles. All we have to do is just specify the name of the file, and that's enough. We can do import global, import intro, and hit save. And as you can see, that's gonna give us a success, and everything still works the same. But now this is super cool because we can kind of separate everything we need and we can easily find it. So if I want something from global, I can take a look. I can make some changes here, very easy. It's not overloaded with a bunch of CSS. Intro, and then if I create another section here, or maybe I have a footer like that, I'm gonna have a h4 here that's gonna say ed. All right, and then I can create my own, so I can go to style.css and do an underscore footer.scss. Okay, I can grab my footer, do my styles here, min height of 10, VH, and then if I want to style the H4 or H5, whatever I have, I can do a font size of 2 rem, so I can continue styling everything in here. And then to make it work, so as you can see, it doesn't work now, we just need to import it in this main file, which is style.scss. So I can just do import and footer, and we are good. Everything should work, and there we go. Perfect. So those are partials, and this is how we can import everything. Okay, next up we have something called mixin. Now this is super awesome. Do you remember when we did something like this? I wanted to create a flex class. So we did a flex class and we did display flex, justify content center, and align item center. Okay, and we did this basically if we use this a lot. So if we use display flex, justify content, align item center a bunch, we can just go to our index.html and add flex to everything that we need to flex, right? Well, here's the power of SASS. We don't need to do this, and we don't need to add anything in the HTML anymore. What we can do is create a mixin. And the way you can do that is you can add an add symbol and say mixin. And then we can give it a name. I can say flex. Okay, and then here I can say display flex, justify content center, and align items center. Hit save. Okay, so we can do the same thing basically. We can also move these. Let's do maybe here in the global styles. All right, so we can move it here. And what I can do is just go, let's go to the intro maybe, and I want to use it here. So I can get rid of everything. All right, let's get rid of this and this and this. And I can go up here and I can do add include, and I can just give the name of the mixin that I have, which is flex. Okay, and then just close this up like this. Hit save. Let's take a look. Does that work? And yes, it still works. So again, you can kind of create these mixins if you want to keep adding these styles to specific elements. So all you do is say include flex, and it works. It just adds everything that we have in here. And we can use this multiple times anywhere that we want. So take a look. What we can do is add some parentheses here on the mixin, and we can add multiple parameters. And what that allows us to do is we can add these parameters that are variables, and we can add them and change them in here. And when we actually include them later on, we can specify what we want to change. So if that sounds confusing, don't worry. Maybe I want to have a display flex, but I also want to have the flexibility of maybe changing the direction or the justify content. So what I can do is add a flex direction like this. And rather than specifying it in here, right, you would say center or whatever, and then create another mixin for column or row, what you can do here is specify, just create this variable, which I'm gonna name direction. I'm gonna add a comma, and maybe I also wanna have the ability to control the justify content. So I'm gonna give a name of justify, like this. And rather than hard coding it in here and specifying it, what I can do is replace this justify with justify, like this, and the flex direction, I can just add the direction. So we basically inject these variables in here. Okay, but the beautiful thing is now that I can go back here and I can just add an include flex, and I can specify these variables. I can say column, and then I can say center. Hit save, and as you can see, everything works. If we take a look at that. We added everything in the center again. So what's happening basically is you inject column here, it travels all the way here. So we have column here, and basically it applies it everywhere that we added this name. So, okay, so we added the direction column. So, well, we have direction here, so we add it here. So this gets changed. Justify also gets added here, which we added center. Okay, so if we want to change this to space around, we can. Hit save, and now everything is spaced around. The cool thing, again, is I can reuse this anywhere I want. So if we go inside maybe this box, let's go, I'm gonna go outside. Let's do box. I can reuse this. I can say include flex, but I want the, I don't want this to be a column. I want it to be in a row, and I want this to be maybe center or something like that. Hit save. And if we take a look, it's here. Let's change this to flex start. Well, we only have one item here, so this is a bad example. Let's grab the footer. Footer. All right, we want row and we want center. And let's take a look. Actually, we have footer specified somewhere else, so let's actually do that since we made it already. In here, I can just include this row center and take a look. It's here in the center. So again, the nice thing about this is that you can create these helper classes, and you have all of this just flexibility with it. And you can use as many as you want here. I can add a comma. I can also specify maybe align items, because these are probably the most popular ones that you're going to use when you add this display flex. Okay, so direction, justify, and align. Hit save. As you can see, it gives me an error now because we haven't specified this. So I would have to go back to all the includes here and add a comma and specify this as well. Center, and also here, center. And then we should be good. Save, and everything is still good. Okay, so these are mixins. They're very powerful. We can use these a lot when you see that you're repeating your code multiple times. Okay, so those are kind of the basics of SASS. I didn't cover everything about SASS because we're gonna kind of get into kind of using it more when we're building out the project, but those are the basics. And I highly recommend that you use these on the further projects when you start new projects. And you can even go back to the other two projects that we made and convert it to SASS and kind of organize everything nicely. Okay, so hey, let's get going in the last project. This is going to be fun.